that we're jumping in halfway through the series, and it's going to have to win with his Demon Hunter as well. Let's go ahead and hop on board as Monsanto, a player that has actually been consistently performing the best in these Masters Tours from the Americas region. It feels like he's the one who's making these deep runs, even getting to the top 8. Let's see if he can continue to piece together some good records on top of course, his hit YouTube Hearthstone news, where he provides excellent coverage that's very factually correct, with a lot of journalistic integrity that's so missing in Hearthstone Esports.
And he's always wearing a hat when he does the news. Unfortunately, in this player photo, not wearing a hat, and also not with Octobot in the opener, so it's already looking like might be difficult for Monsanto to pull this one together, because while he does have Neophyte, the curve kind of stops there, and he doesn't have Secret Passage or something like Mancrick to make sure that he has decent follow-up. So it already looks like he might have to resign himself to proccing this Octobot, make sure that ShuiMoo doesn't get the initiative on how many cards actually gets discounted.
Monsanto already stuck in quite an unusual spot, given that excuse me, Gia, as I choked on some water here. So Monsanto, yeah, he doesn't have the answer directly to the Octobot. So then in this case, do you even feel like you want to extend into the board? Would you rather get an opportunity to answer it later? This is something that's going on in Monsanto's mind, as he does not have the Octobot to answer right back. And you mentioned before the importance of being able to keep on pace with that, because without it, then Monsanto's going to start falling behind on tempo, and he's going to have to start playing from behind. That's not what any player in this matchup wants to do.
Yeah, that was a long thought decision for Monsanto towards the end there. I honestly thought he was going to proc the Octobot, because he didn't have necessarily a way of answering the Octobot in one fell swoop in the near future. He would have to wait for the Wicked Stab to upgrade or try and fish from the One Thief. So in the end here, he does proc the Octobot one turn later, kind of saying that, okay, at least I have the Mancrick, so this is something I definitely want to get on board right now, and so ShuiMoo is going to have a way of proccing it. That's why Monsanto hit the Octobot, but it comes back to bite him in this scenario, because there is one extra discount for ShuiMoo.
Alright, well, ShuiMoo does pick up Henwu. Doesn't seem like it's something that he's thinking about right now, but he does have the opportunity to drop Mancrick or the Field Contact this turn, start drawing cards. The question does become, for ShuiMoo, does he want to continue to fight for board presence and just load up this Mancrick? Does he want to answer the board state at all with all his cheap hand? And then how does he even spend his mana to make sure that it's he's being efficient? Because part of the thing about Octobot is it helps you squeeze in these really efficient plays. Oh, he's going to Shadow Step the Octobot here.
Okay, so by doing this, he can get down the Mancrick and the Prize Plunder, and he can swing into the Mancrick on the other side to clear it. But, okay, it looks like he's holding on to Prize Plunder for the Field Contact turn. So if the goal of this turn was mainly to replay the Octobot, I was actually looking at just Tenwu Octobot there, kind of a callback to what Demon did last turn, just expecting that if Monsanto couldn't one-shot the Octobot on the last turn, turn 4, it's still pretty hard to do that because Wicked Stab still has not ranked up. ShuiMoo did go for replaying the Octobot, which means he gets that possibility, but by using Shadow Step instead of Tenwu, he's able to get the Mancrick on board as well, which is still kind of fine, because if you do expect to get the second discount, then the Tenwu is very likely playable alongside the Field Contact turn.
Monsanto's going to Shadow Step the One Thief, perhaps looking for a way to answer the board. Devolving Missiles would probably be the best case scenario for him. Not end up finding it. Just another copy of Brain Freeze available, as well as some mana or extra life. How does...
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, but so how does Monsanto plan out his mid game here? Because it feels like a lot of his stuff is more reactive, doesn't actually have a lot of substance to his hand, so I am kind of worried about Monsanto from this point forward.
Yeah, I mean, he was really hoping for that devolving there, or even maybe like Flurry to try and just freeze the Octobot and deal with it the next turn with Wicked Stab, barring ShuiMoo having his own activator, of course. But because Monsanto couldn't find an answer, he doesn't really have a plan for the mid-game. It's just kind of grit your teeth and hope that ShuiMoo doesn't have the absolute pop-off, but he truly does here, even if it just is with a single prize plunder. It's a lot of board presence. Although having said that, if there isn't a way to replay the prize plunder, then Monsanto can still get rid of the field contact on the other side.
Ooh. ShuiMoo does have the ability Secret Passage to try to find that Shadow Step. It'll cost 1. So still
It's still playable. Alternatively, he could just Aug Merchant his own field contact, but I kind of think you might as well just remove more damage on the other side. The Cult Neophyte is kind of a pain, and like the prize plunder is not likely to stick around for another turn. Okay, so you're just gonna go about removing the Neophyte by using the Aug Merchant instead of Shadow Step. Okay.
That's right, and has the Penfillinger Drung as well to help in case Monsanto isn't able to clear the field contact. Right now, he's in a situation where the Secret Passage might be the best possible play available to him to look for other answers. He could also try to think about what he can do with just the cards in hand. Vanessa Van Cleef would get him a Guardian Aug Merchant right back. He could remove the field contact through a Brain Freeze or the Wicked Stab. But it just feels like he's playing too far from behind in that case. I feel like he needs something big off the Secret Passage in order to get himself out of the situation.
I was honestly leaning towards the clear turn you were talking about, though, because in terms of what he can get off of Secret Passage with 4 mana remaining, I feel that it's not better on average than what he had access to. Wicked Stab for Mancrick, and then Brain Freeze, possibly even Vanessa and Aug Merchant, and then just like take some trades to deal with the field contact. Like, obviously he would still be pretty far behind on board, but Monsanto does pick up a prize plunder, which is pretty much the best he could ask for with the Octobot to get him to potentially have this Flame Strike a turn earlier, which is maybe a ticket back into this game.
Yeah, at this point, maybe Monsanto has to hope that this Flame Strike gets so much value that it sweeps up a ton of cards and ShuiMoo overextends. ShuiMoo going to start off the Foxy Fraud to draw cards with the Swindle opportunity.
Yep.
Go from there.
Leaving enough mana still to get Wicked Stab, which he would really want to one-shot this Octobot, but currently not available to him. So it looks like Monsanto is going to have access to that Flame Strike a bit earlier, and even though he will be behind on health total and resources, he will have time.
Oh? Will he, though? Because this Foxy Fraud, Vanessa Van Cleef get the prize plunder back, I believe.
Oh, was that the last card played? My mistake. I thought it was the Octobot that came down last, but yeah, that's huge for ShuiMoo.
That's a cool play. And a big one, too, for the reasons you mentioned. The Flame Strike can't come down. That may have just bought ShuiMoo enough time to get... Oh, Hop, what is this? Earth Elemental Greybow. Some of the best possible scenario that you could ask for here. And particularly because Greybow can come back with the summons. Yeah. ShuiMoo, all of a sudden, ran into the Iron Wall of Canada.
Yeah. However, it's actually not quite enough here because ShuiMoo just has so much board presence that he can trade down the Earth Elemental nice and easy, use the Pen Flinger and the last trade to get through the Greybow, and it was a little more than an annoyance here. It did buy Monsanto the time to go for Flame Strike, but not with this Neophyte coming down and preventing that.
I mean, that Flame Strike once more not able to be played, and so what ended up being a situation where maybe Monsanto could bring it back after a very fortunate Janice Barov. He just looks dead here at this point. And I don't think there's anything that can get him out, just based off the fact that everything costs so much. That's the whole point of Miracle Rogue playing 1 to 2 mana cards mainly in their deck, is that they can squeeze in a ton of plays, keep up the draw. And then in this case, Monsanto just got too far behind. Oh, never mind. Monsanto found the lethal, attacking to the Mancrick, stabbing himself.
That means we're going to go all the way to Game 5 in this series. Again, we jumped in the middle, so it's a bit unfortunate we didn't get to see Monsanto on the Jombre Druid a little bit earlier on. He's going to have to try again with this Rogue, whereas ShuiMoo now has that OTK Demon Hunter. So it's yet another example of this matchup that's kind of been emblematic of the meta, and TJ was saying he thinks it's somewhere smack dab in the middle in terms of favorability, and I tend to agree. I think it's a very, very close and skill-heavy matchup.
All right, well, I mean, it just goes to show you exactly what Gia had to break down about the matchup, which is the advantages of being able to get those Octobot. I really like some of the heads-up play from ShuiMoo, recognizing how to make the boards difficult to deal with, even if your opponent does get lucky with certain outcomes like the Jandis Barov. And, you know, just small little things where I wasn't entirely sure of. ShuiMoo, for example, shadow stepping that early Octobot to really get the advantage going for the discounts, and, you know, roll from that into a nice curve while Monsanto was kind of stuck looking for answers. And I think it could also just be the fact that you seeing Monsanto desperately shadow stepping to try to answer the board state might have told ShuiMoo all the information about what Monsanto's hand was like.
Yeah, it snowballs way out of control when that first Octobot gets discounts on a field contact hand in particular. And it so happened that ShuiMoo also had the Mancrick pretty early, and with the card draw you just get double benefits, right? Because you give yourself even more chance of hitting the 3-7 early. He didn't actually need it in this case because there was just so much board presence that he protected with that timely Neophyte, even though he didn't necessarily know about a Flame Strike on the other side. And to be fair, even if Monsanto had gotten the Flame Strike, I'm pretty sure ShuiMoo still just wins that by virtue of Monsanto being at 6 by the time that happens. But it was all just cleanly optimized there, and he will be on this Demon Hunter now, which from our brief glimpse of the deck list didn't seem to have anything out of the ordinary. We were seeing some spicy text from Jay a while ago, but this looks like the very normal list with one ooze in there.
All right, so game number 5, where the winner gets to improve to a very nice 6-1 record. Not quite there yet, but it puts them at the doorstep to potentially lock in that top 16 spot. Monsanto's hand looking much better this time, having the efficient Octobot to start things off, and a way to activate it.
Yeah, that's pretty good. He can drop the Octobot on 2, and then on turn 3, proc it with the Guardian Og Merchant if ShuiMoo doesn't proc it himself, which would lead into turn 4, Coin Jandis, which is pretty powerful. It means he has a slow early couple of turns, but I think it's worth it to get down the fastest Jandis possible because that's kind of the only thing going for his hand right now.
Yeah, there's, you know, the belief that efficient Octobot, if you're on the coin, there's a lot of times where you just want to put it out as fast as possible. But when you have a curve like this, kind of hard to ignore exactly what you described, getting Jandis before the nerf, playing it for 5 mana instead. And ShuiMoo does not have an answer. You know, traditionally the breakpoints are 3 in order to be able to answer those early game minions. And now ShuiMoo, unless he has a way to get the damage like off of a Chaos Strike that I'm not thinking about, I don't think that he can avoid this activation of the Octobot.
No, he can't. And so it's just going to be the kill from him, and he gets to develop the Thalnos. Yes, it's quite a few cards that he will be discounting for Monsanto, but the good news for ShuiMoo is at least he's ahead on board right now, and he has the Skull in a position where it's very easy to get on the left side. And for Monsanto, this is kind of the one slow turn leading up to the Coin Jandis, which the One Thief is actually a very decent pickup because it allows him to spend his mana, and it can be activated by the Og Merchant. And I was thinking that would just be a One Thief dagger turn, but Monsanto has bigger plans.
Yeah, goes for the Secret Passage. I mean, essentially the same kind of play here. The One Thief still has options to be played this turn. Finds... well, it looks like to be either a Primordial Studies or a Ring Toss Diplomacy. Not a lot of application to Rogue, at least not in this current state.
Yeah, and because the ring toss will get him rogue secrets, I felt like that had the least utility to it, but he actually does pick it up. I was thinking the primordial studies was better as a cheaper way to like activate combos, and sometimes cheap spell damage minions are pretty good with Wicked Stab. But there is, you know, a certain amount of disruption to be had even with rogue secrets. Like shenanigans is a real thing in this matchup, and he can corrupt the ring toss by playing the Jandis next turn.
I do like it when I think about it a little bit more. The coin Janus to activate the corruption, and then you get the secrets. You do want to ensure that even though you have a secret passage, you want to keep that steady flow of card draw. And Dirty Tricks very likely to activate in this matchup unless ShuiMoo does not play any spells. So I think this all makes sense from Monsanto's perspective as a way to fill out his curve, especially at the discounts. Janus Baroff comes into play. Two reasonably sized minions.
Yeah, that's pretty good. The taunt on the Scrap Golem is not to be underestimated, and also just the Death Rattle gaining armor, because a lot of the time Demon Hunter wins this matchup by getting Rogue down to the 24 breakpoint and then dealing that damage towards the end of the game. And they spend that early game maybe fitting in some hero powers to face. Right now it feels like ShuiMoo has to accrue more than just the bare minimum of combo pieces because of that Death Rattle. I want to note from ShuiMoo, though, that it was very disciplined of him to not go for Immolation Aura the turn prior to this, even though there were 3 minions that could have immediately gotten swept up by it. Was holding on to that with the Talented Arcanist if need be for a bigger board development, and he absolutely gets rewarded because that big push from Monsanto super easily swept up, and ShuiMoo will have what looks to be a relatively easy skull turn, but Monsanto can potentially ring toss for shenanigans into it and maybe dirty tricks.
Right, if you draw cards, then I'm going to draw cards, is one way to think about it.
Yeah, it's going for it.
Go for it. Okay.
Dirty tricks.
Plagiarize is interesting too, but I don't think that's exactly what he's looking for.
Shenanigans!
Oh, shenanigans, let's do it!
It's the thing. I literally meant that card. I wasn't just saying shenanigans for like a placeholder.
I knew what you meant, and I felt like perhaps people who aren't well tuned to rogue secrets, if they don't say play a lot of rogue, know that possibility of coming up. So let's see what ShuiMoo gets.
What's the banana?
Immolation Aura.
Yeah, that's not a huge, well, not huge, but definitely relevant in terms of ShuiMoo's toolkit, because that's a very, very useful card to get rid of a big board from Monsanto. From this point, if ShuiMoo wants to clear multiple minions, he'll have to use a Fellscream Blast, which does feed into his combo. So while it's not obviously not as high impact as transforming a Moarg or Il'gynoth itself, I think that's still an above average outcome for shenanigans from Monsanto. And he gave up a Kazaka's turn to specifically do that into the skull. And we'll see if he gets rewarded for it. This looks like it will be the Kazaka's turn now, potentially.
It does seem like the time to set up something like that so you can get big, impactful cards going. I was also thinking about the possibility of what Monsanto is doing right here, which is just drawing cards, setting up a fast board right now.
Yeah.
Gets the Skull of Gul'dan anyways out the Vanessa Van Cleave.
Yeah, probably not going to be outcastable, but looking at it again, the field contact turn is very reasonable here because he saw that Immolation Aura transformed into a banana, and that would be the second aura because one was already used. So this type of board, which kind of looks weak to most Demon Hunter removal, is in this situation pretty decent, especially with this Divine Shield now making the Fellscream Blast harder to use for ShuiMoo.
Oh, Sana went for a Shadow Step. Did he get the last activation off of it? He did.
Nicely done. It starts to get a bit tricky now for ShuiMoo because that Fellscream Blast is only pinging off some Divine Shields and a 2-1 really. Feels like he has to go for it though. Leaving up the field contact is quite scary.
That's a good point. The fact that the Divine Shields are also positioned to minimize the impact of the Fellscream Blast is going to be tricky. A Dreadlord bite? okay. So the fact that it can deal 1 damage to all the minions, clear off the Divine Shield. That's exactly what ShuiMoo is looking for. Is there anything else that he's considering? He is. He's going to pick the Spectral Sight instead.
I was going to say the one downside of Dreadlord's Bite is that ShuiMoo severely needed card draw. He had no other card draw effects outside of that. I was going to say it's probably outweighed by the fact that he gets such a clean clear and then just hopes to top deck from that point, but he prioritizes the card draw and hits Throw Glaive now, which is very good in this situation. It's going to keep drawing, it looks like. To be fair, the only minion that really warrants immediate removal right now is the Field Contact, which he can still do. He was just prioritizing drawing towards his own win condition.
Jeez.
I like holding onto the Throw Glaive because it gets a lot more value when you have the full mana to work with. It can work as its own board sweep.
Jay, you had mentioned that hitting the Immolation Aura is low-key a big deal. And you
high key right now.
Exactly why that is. Because the fact that this banana is just sitting there and Immolation Aura hasn't been able to be activated, I'm sure ShuiMoo really wishes he had access to that. And now Monsanto's going to continue to build up the board. Kazakus comes down, trying to see if he can build up a big golem to potentially swing things and finish it off. Does end up look like he picked the 1-cost golem, perhaps for small buffs.
Yeah, I think that's super reasonable in this spot, especially since he has Shadow Step. So essentially every small golem he plays is +4 damage if he hits the buff, but he didn't hit the buff as an option, which is quite unfortunate indeed. And it looks like he's gonna replay the Kazakus to look for that specific golem here. Does he maybe deviate to 5 cost instead to have a stronger play next turn? I think he still has strong plays even without it. But doesn't hit the board buff again. That's really unlucky.
Just more Divine Shields, more sturdy board, a second Warblaze that doesn't really need. ShuiMoo still in a situation where things are very scary and dangerous for him, trying to find a way to stabilize, and it's just looking very ugly at the moment. Is it Throw Glaive time for him?
Definitely feels like it, but at the same time, he would love to find the time to get down this Raging Fell Screamer. I don't necessarily think he can afford to do so because the Fell Screamer's not relevant for the immediate next turn, right? Because he needs Il'gynoth exactly for lethal, whereas just Moarg won't really do much in terms of his board clearing potential. So I'm thinking this is some combination of Arcanist Fellscream with Throw Glaives, but it's kind of awkward to use that in the best way possible because you do want to get maximum healing off of the Fellscream, which means Divine Shields need to come off, but you can't use Throw Glaive to ping off a Divine Shield because it won't regenerate itself for repeated use afterward.
Impatient. Time grows short.
So man, he might have to ping off a Divine Shield with the Aug Merchant instead, maybe? Or just say he's not scared whatsoever.
I think it might be Fellscream Blast time too. For ShuiMoo, I think that's just the most efficient way to deal with the board, even if it's not something that he wants to use.
Yeah. The banana did not get in on time. Yeah, ShuiMoo considering there that he would rather fit in the Raging Fell Screamer than a bunch of Throw Glaives, which, to be fair, if you're healing for this much, then the amount of minions left on board is not that scary. However, he doesn't actually know about what the second golem from Monsanto is. Like, from his perspective, that could still be the 5-cost board buff, but he'll be relieved to know it was yet another 1-cost that is relatively low impact here. Oh, this Neophyte.
Ooh, finds a Neophyte, has 10 wound hand as well. A lot of ways for Monsanto to shut down what ShuiMoo could do, and I think Monsanto has definitely picked up on the fact that ShuiMoo still is pretty far away from landing onto any kind of combo setup. He's also at 34 life, which is very inconvenient for breakpoints for some combo pieces. So, you know, I think this is a good opportunity for Monsanto to really twist the knife and make it super painful for ShuiMoo to get any momentum going. Yeah, it's going to clear off the board. Or clear off as much as he can while pushing some damage. And now back over to ShuiMoo.
really hard to determine the breakpoints between 1 and 2 cult neophytes. Does that make a difference for how much ShuiMoo is actually able to clear on average? It's mainly impactful for exactly Throwglaive, because essentially every neophyte effect is compounding because you need to play Throwglaive multiple times. But Monsanto in the end prioritizes getting the Mankrik down, which is still very valid because he just has Swindle and a high likelihood of immediately getting the 3-7, and the Tenwu still has potential to be used with Alexstrasza a bit later on. ShuiMoo, I think, should Throwglaive at least the Neophyte, because if that gets replayed, then he doesn't really have outs, because with this setup, he's kind of hoping to runner Skull off the top into Il'gynoth to be able to get lethal that way.
That's right. But the good news is that it's not like Monsanto has put out a meaningful offensive. These are all one-attack minions plus, Mankrik and Neophyte. So it's not really super threatening, so he does have a little bit of extra time. I do like that he's chipping away some of that armor. Do like the kill on the Neophyte as well, though, for the reasons that you mentioned.
Looks like he's gonna kill it with the Arcanist instead. Okay, I think this is very smart, because if he hits Il'gynoth, he doesn't need a breakpoint on Monsanto's face HP, because 2 Moargs and an Arcanist with Fellscream Blast is already 36. And so he's saying he would rather preserve the Throwglaive in case he doesn't hit runner Skull next turn and has to take another full turn of trying to survive on board. It's optimistic, but I think it gives him a little bit more leeway. And Monsanto currently doesn't have a great way of cashing in on this board in terms of buffing it, but he does have a lot of burst in hand.
That's right, he does have the Wicked Stabs. He can find a way to get to the top end of the deck. He will have a lot of damage. He's going to start targeting immediately.
I think he's just digging with, Evocation here.
Oh.
Looking for Fireball, which is actually not lethal yet.
It's not. He has Ruined Orb, I believe, he just picked up. Also can use these Conjured Mana Biscuits.
Make some hand space so that he can get to the 3-7 Mankrik. He's just trying to turbo out as much damage as possible here. Not lethal, but it's a strong board development for sure.
It is. I can't help but feel maybe he ran out of time. He queued up so many different actions in the last few seconds. Looks like he did get the Ruined Orb off.
Yeah, I don't think he got to really pick anything relevant there, but all of those cards were a kind of draw that Monsanto doesn't necessarily need, right? He just wants disruption somehow, but here's the runner card draw. There's the Skull. Il'gynoth is... Wait. Do these left Moargs actually cost 0? Only one of them costs 0, right? So you can only play 2 Moargs this turn with Il'gynoth. And so Fellscream Blast is not lethal just yet.
It was so close because, yeah, you're right. The only one that was discounted was the one that was just drawn. Everything else was a Fell Screamer, so he can't play all 3 Moargs from what it seems like.
Which means he's kind of just... Well, he can use Fellscream Blast to stay alive here with a couple Moargs and Fellscream, but that kind of deletes ShuiMoo's win condition.
Just draw the final card of the deck, I suppose.
You sometimes do this on ladder where you just posture as if you have the lethal, and then sometimes they snap concede, but Monsanto is going to do no such thing. And that means that Monsanto takes the game very close at the end there. If ShuiMoo had gotten the Skull instead of having to go Spectral into Skull, this could have been a very, very different story.
Wow. Well, what a slugfest to wrap it up in game number 5. Monsanto keeping up the pressure. Love the recognition that right there and then was his best chance to try and pressure and push ShuiMoo in a bad spot. And because of that pressure, ShuiMoo was just a little bit off. Having additional mana could have made all the difference in the world. And, you know, I really have to say that this was one that felt super close. It could have gone either way. And overall, despite the fact that ShuiMoo came up short by a pretty decent amount of damage at the end, that could have easily started going towards the OTK Demon Hunter's perspective. And so, you know, some of the unusual timings too. You know, you were kind of talking about like the pace at which Monsanto maybe wants to save these cards or want to extend. It seemed like Monsanto had a really good beat on what ShuiMoo's hand was looking like. And also just, you know, small things like the shenanigans that end up paying off huge dividends for Monsanto. I love that recognition, which is not something that immediately stuck out to me when I saw that ring toss.
Yeah, that was just so creative from Monsanto. I was advocating for the Primordial Studies because I felt like on average that was going to do more than 4 mana for 2 Rogue Secrets, but I was wrong. That shenanigans, even though it did